What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. This is Legitical Response. I cover political news, and we got another one coming for you today, folks. The corporate press is in full swing. It's election season, so you guys know what's going on with this. We're rooting for Trump over here. I'm sorry to people that don't like Trump. I happen to get behind this guy because I see the Democrats as a threat to democracy, to actual democracy. That's what they're doing. Kamala Harris has promoted her communism, to a little degree, just a little bit of communism here and there, but the policies are insane. Her promotion of herself is insane, acting like on day one we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. Well, how come you're not already doing it? It's all a bunch of garbage to me. And since I've started reading the news, I have started to see a trend with Democrats. They don't care about the Webster's definition of democracy. When they say democracy, they're talking about something totally different. Totally different. But let's get into the story right quick, y'all. Check this out. Trump says he had every right to interfere in the election. Now, what he did right here, this was a Fox interview where they got to talking about some of the indictments, and Trump was referring to interfering in the election. I hate how they say it like that. It makes it sound terrible. But technically what he was doing and what he's talking about is legitimately challenging the results of the election in court because of what we know the Democrats did in 2019 and in 2020 in the lead up to the 2020 election by hiring a bunch of lawyers, activists, and all kind of other people, where they say the forces of labor came together with the forces of the corporate to put together a cabal to work behind the scenes in the background to, quote-unquote, save the election. It was a conspiracy, in their words, not mine. But what they essentially did is they had a group of lawyers, they put together this scheme, and they went around state to state talking with state election officials and lobbying these people to get them to change the rules around elections to benefit Democrats, because Democrats were getting out there hiring hordes of activists to go around and knock on doors, go to Democrat residences and harass them in some cases to get these people to vote by mail. And to me, that's underhanded as hell. To me, that's cheating. And I don't like to see that. I don't like, why are you changing the rules and laws to benefit you, right? And not notifying the other side. That's the bad part. They didn't notify the other side until Time Magazine came out with their article about the shadow campaign, which I have a whole video on that, which will appear right here at the end of the video. Every single video. So if you want to see that, which, by the way, I need to redo that video, to be honest with you. I know I keep talking about it, but I never redo it. Sorry, I will one day, I can promise you that. But let's get into this right quick, because once again, these people just lie, folks, and they love to twist the truth. It's crazy. Former President Donald Trump, in an interview broadcast late Sunday, argued he had every right to interfere with the 2020 election while repeating his claim that criminal election interference cases against him are politically motivated. Now, anybody with a pair of eyes and a brain and can use that brain to logically deduce everything that's going on around you, especially if you read the news, can tell that this is definitely politically motivated, right? If Donald Trump would not have reaffirmed his bid for 2024 to rerun as president, he would never have been indicted. It just so happens, right? And they say, oh, there's a coincidence. It just so happens that Donald Trump announced he was running for president for 2024. And then just a couple of weeks later, all these indictments started coming down the pipelines. Yeah, freaking right. There's no coincidences in politics. I'm sorry. That's just how it works. It's so crazy that my poll numbers go up. Whoever heard you get indicted for interfering with a presidential election where you have every right to do it? You get indicted and your poll numbers go up. When people get indicted, your poll numbers go down, Trump said in an interview on Fox News' Life, Liberty, and Levin. Trump, the GOP presidential nominee, was responding to a suggestion from host and lawyer Mark Levin that President Biden or Vice President Harris could have told the Attorney General to knock it off in reference to the federal election interference case. But on the other hand, we have had evidence. We've seen email evidence, not necessarily saying that it was written by Biden, but it came from one of his accounts to tell Merrick Garland to go after Trump. Not in those exact words. That was a hyperbolic statement, but you read between the lines on the email. I don't remember it word for word. Yes, that actually happened. So let's keep going. The former president faces federal charges in Washington for his alleged actions to subvert the 2020 election results. You love how they say that, to subvert it, right? Yeah, that was legitimate challenges to the election. Now, he had a little bit of extrajudicial challenges to the election, if you will, because most of his, or at least over half of all the cases he brought, they said he has no standing to bring these cases, which means they didn't even look at the evidence. They just said that he doesn't have the right to bring these cases. Somebody else would have had to bring the cases. In other words, one of the voters in that state or district or whatever would have had to have been on the lawsuit for that lawsuit to actually go through. That's what it was. So he could have had some of the most damning evidence in the world for fraud in the 2020 election, and the courts turned him down upon standing, which is insane to me, right? And these people, like, I was just watching a debate between Destiny and Ben Shapiro on this matter, and I just wanted to wring Ben Shapiro's neck for not mentioning some of these points that, look, a lot of these challenges might have been legitimate, but they just were never seen. The courts didn't even look at them. Right? And then they go and say the corporate press and the mainstream narrative machine get out there and testify to everybody that, oh, there was no evidence of fraud. They didn't look at the freaking evidence, right? We don't know what the evidence is. You can go and look up the lawsuits filed and see what they claim the evidence is. But since there was no discovery in the cases, we'll never know. Now, if you look at the court cases, most of the cases that Trump brought, yeah, he come to find out, yes, there was fraud in the election. There was widespread fraud, at least in those cases. But it wasn't, the cases that were brought wasn't enough to overturn the results because it was here and there and blah, blah, blah. You get it, right? Now, knowing that there was a bunch of fraud, the courts won't look at the cases. What do you do about that, right? When you have a person in charge of the federal government and he knows that there was widespread fraud, or at least he believes there was widespread fraud, would not it be derelict in his duty to not investigate this, to not try to bring all this evidence to light and show everybody, right? To try to bring it to court. Yes, that's what he should do. He would be derelict in his duty if he did not do that, letting the Democrats get away with cheating in the election just because they changed the rules to make it legal to cheat. I don't think that's right. So yes, he had every right to do what he did. Now, he did go a little bit far in a few cases, right? Some of the results, once the electors were turned in by the government, yeah, asking Mike Pence to not certify the slates of electors, yeah, that might have been a little bit too far. At that point, there's nothing you can do about it, Trump. Sure, you might have known that there was a bunch of fraud and that, yeah, some of those electors were still being disputed, for crying out loud. You do have the legal justice system, right, which in this case is injustice, but the governor sent those slates of electors anyway. There's nothing you can do about it at that point. So, yeah, maybe he shouldn't have asked Mike Pence to not certify, but I think, in my opinion, looking at all the evidence that I've seen, he had every right to do so because the state legislatures still disputed the slates of electors that were certified. So, it's rough. The Supreme Court should have took all this up, but they didn't. It's just insane to me, but let the past be the past. I honestly think Trump should stop talking about this. But, you can't really stop that because why Jack Smith has more indictments coming down on Trump, right? He just launched a superseding indictment to overturn the Supreme Court. It's like, come on, dude. What are you freaking doing here? This is all getting outright insane. Well, this is the worst case of election interference that anyone's ever seen, certainly in our country, Trump said during the Fox News interview. They do this in third world countries. They have some of it in South America. They don't do it a lot, believe it or not, but they do it. And it's such a bad precedent because people are going to think about it differently, and they're going to think about it differently. And it's very sad, actually, he added. He went on to argue those prosecuting the cases against him are politically biased against him. Yes, as a matter of fact, Jack Smith is absolutely deranged with Trump. Look what he did in the documents case, for crying out loud. If that's not derangement, I don't know what is. They put people in the DA's office, Trump said. This was all coming out of the Department of Justice in order to get their political opponent, me. Trump also said Fulton County, Georgia District Attorney Fani Willis came up with this crazy scheme and a lot of people were hurt, in reference to the co-defendants charged alongside him in Georgia. The remarks came days after Special Counsel Jack Smith last week filed a superseding indictment in the federal election subversion case in the wake of the Supreme Court's landmark immunity ruling in July. It wasn't really a landmark ruling. I know how they use that term. Technically it is, but technically, the presidents have had immunity since they created the Constitution, for crying out loud. If not, if presidents didn't have immunity, Obama would be sitting in jail for murder right now, for crying out loud. But they do have immunity. It's funny, Joe Biden getting up there and arguing against immunity. That's just insane. I almost said it. He's mentally challenged for doing so. I'll just say it that way. The nation's highest court ruled presidents have absolute immunity for actions that fall within their core responsibilities of their office and are at least presumptive immune for all other official acts. Trump has repeatedly claimed he should be immune from the charges as a result. Yes, because all of what he did pretty much falls under official acts. Telling the DOJ to look into all this election interference garbage, all this election fraud, Yes, that falls under official acts. He is solely responsible for conducting justice in this country, right? Like, he's the president of the United States. He presides over the DOJ. The Harris campaign ripped Trump for the remarks. Everything Donald Trump has promised on the campaign trail, from terminating the Constitution. Hang on, Kamala Harris. When did Trump ever say he was going to terminate the Constitution? Right? I don't think anybody but his most ardent supporters would actually vote for him if he said, I'm going to take the Constitution and I'm going to rip it to shreds and terminate it. No, of course not. He never said that. So these people, once again, are lying. And the corporate press does not actually fact check this. They just leave this statement and say, oh, well, that's what she said. But they don't refute it, right? In other words, like earlier in the article, they said Trump's baseless conspiracy theories, or that he claims this. Stuff like that. They'll say that about Trump, but they won't say that about Kamala Harris. Right? Because I could easily read this as everything Donald Trump has promised on the campaign trail, from terminating the Constitution baselessly to imprisoning his political opponents and promising to rule as a dictator on day one, baselessly makes it clear that he believes he is above the law. So she claims. But they don't say that, do they? They don't say that at all. Now Trump is claiming that he had every right to interfere in the 2020 election. She baselessly says he did not. Harris Wall's campaign spokesperson, Serafina Chitka, said in a statement Monday. While Donald Trump is pushing his false history about the past, the American people are ready for a new way forward, she added. They know Vice President Harris is the tough-as-nails prosecutor we need to turn the page on chaos, fear, and division and uphold the rule of law. Now, as I've proven outright on this channel, that no, that's all a lie. They don't care about the rule of law. Otherwise, they wouldn't be suing Texas for crying out loud, for trying to help the federal government. They wouldn't be subverting federal law by allowing millions of people to pour across our southern border. Joe Biden wouldn't be subverting Congress by withholding weapons shipments that were congressionally approved. By the way, he wouldn't be subverting democracy by trying to go after his political opponent with phony indictments, for crying out loud. As a matter of fact, on some of those indictments, Joe Biden himself has committed. So it's like these people are just hypocritical, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. I'm sorry. I can't side with these people. It's just insane. I can criticize Trump till I'm blue in the face. And hey, if you have criticisms of Trump, put them down in the comments section. I'll probably agree with you on some of it. But on a lot of it, I don't agree with, because once you look into this, once you do all the research yourself and find that these people are just outright lying to you, that, yeah, what Trump did, what might not have been the best thing you can do, but it wasn't illegal by any means, by any stretch of the word, as a matter of fact. What he did was, as a matter of fact, he should have done, and I'm glad he did some of it. Some of it he shouldn't have done, of course. Like holding that rally, in hindsight, sure. But holding a rally, you know, everybody has the right to protest in this country. And the FBI does not have the right to go after peaceful protesters for going to the nation's capital and not being violent and just being there as peaceful protesters, walking into the Capitol after being ushered in by police. But, you know, the corporate press, they'll get out there and say the violent rioters, and they'll say all these people that were indicted were January 6th rioters. And that's just false. It's just fake news coming from the corporate press. They're trying to make you think that all of these 1,500 people that were arrested were violent rioters. They weren't. Only about a couple of hundred, 150 to 200 people were actually violent. That's insane. When you have 1,400 people, some of them, a lot of them are still sitting in prison till this day. Some of them are sitting in prison for 20 freaking years. One of them for sure wasn't even there on the day. Didn't even go to Washington on January 6th. And he's sitting in prison for 22 years. Now, that was seditious conspiracy. Which, yeah, he shouldn't have done that. But 22 freaking years? Come on. It's all insane. But I think that's all I got for this one, y'all. I want y'all to let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comment section. And y'all try to have a good day. Stay legitical. Peace.